Hello, dear friends, and welcome to today's webinar on the occasion of my little birthday. I'm 62 today. If you remember, 2 years ago, when I turned 60, I organized a webinar to talk about some projects I had envisioned, and you were all enthusiastic and supported and encouraged me. So today I'm here to present a second one to show a little bit of what path has been taken, what has been accomplished, and what we can do together to push forward this idea of all of us leaving a legacy, helping out in our communities, and carrying on the work which we can say God has given us to do. So today the topic is what education for the youth of Ghana, and look at language, culture, development, and technology. So let's jump straight into it and see how this works. So basically, I would like to look at the keywords in this topic. So there's education, there's the youth, there's language, culture, development, and technology. What do they all have to do in terms of how the youth are educated and how they can fit into their God-given roles for promoting community development and making society a better place for all of us? The picture here shows some university students who accompanied me to the Pato Aveime area to interact with children and teachers at the Invent Wilhelm Academy. So what is education? What is wrong with our educational system? What do you think of education? That's a question I should ask you. And in the live chat tonight, we'll have your responses. For me, from my point of view, I think our educational system is quite defunct. It's not a very good shape. And therefore, I believe that there's a lot to be done to put it back on its tracks. So I think our children are being miseducated and are being alienated from who they are. And this leads directly to migration, brain drain. The youth have a poor mentality. They feel inadequate. They feel they cannot do anything, and they believe only others, maybe white people or Westerners or government, can help them. There's this dependency syndrome. Now, this stems, of course, from the fact that our educational system is materialistic and Western-oriented. Everybody knows the A for Apple syndrome. But there's also a schism between science and religion. We are taught in our schools that science is on one side, religion is on the other side. And in fact, the further we go, we are taught that religion is not good and that science is probably the only avenue for progress. If you look in the biography at the end, at the references at the end, you see a video where I talk about the concepts of science and religion and how both should go together, actually, to help us progress. So our education is anti-cultural. It doesn't help us to love our culture, to promote it, and why not refine it? It is anti-environmental. It turns us against where we live, where we are from. And you can see today, even just from the pollution we heap on our streets and around our homes, that we are alienated. We are no more in sync with our natural environment, who we are, and things like that. So despite their huge potential and noble aspirations, I think the youth of Ghana are hopeless. They're disillusioned and frustrated. See how the youth in Kenya today are fighting at the risk of their own lives against the government. See how in Nkwanta, in the northern Volta or the OT region of Ghana, The youth were pushed into the streets and had to slaughter each other just for chieftaincy or other such issues. The youth have a kind of a lazy and quick fix mentality, and a lot of evils, a lot of social forces like betting, internet fraud, juju, 419 as they call it, are things that hamper their progress. And what are their aspirations? The aspirations currently are get rich quick. They want money. They want to succeed, in quotes, as they call it. And you hear them say, my year wild, my year wild. So they are just out there to profiteer. They do not want to make any effort. So in terms of language, and I think language is really the basis of many of the problems we have in our schools. There's this issue of basic education instruction being torn between the local languages and English. Since independence, we've had an up and down relationship. At some points, local language is used for instruction. At other points, English is used. But there is really an imbalance. And that has been really hampering our education. Lots of research has shown that this is a problem we have. Now, so for example, the lack of use of language, of local language or mother tongue leads to poor performance, low IQ, and school dropout. If you look at the EGRA, Early Grade Reading Assessment results for 2015, it showed that about 3% of students in P1, P2, thereabouts, P2, P3, could read and write. Only 3% could read and write. And that, in fact, across the country, there are high levels of illiteracy in both the local language and English. Now, this, of course, leads to the high rates of dropout. By P6, 20 to 30% of both boys and girls drop out of school. In general, we see, for example, that 1.2 million children out of school in Ghana, 12 million in Nigeria. But in Nigeria, the problem is compounded by corruption and the conflicts we have in that country. So all this, of course, hampers personal and individual growth, community cohesion, and national development. Now, going on, we can see that the next aspect of our talk is on development. So, of course, with the disillusionment of youth, the misuse of language, naturally, development is thwarted. But before that, there's culture. And the fact that English, the fact that English language and Western content in our educational system means that our children, our languages and our cultures suffer from acculturation, attrition, where we stop using our own languages, we don't use them well, we have to use English words while we are speaking Ewe or Twi or Ga. And there's minorization. Our languages become minority languages. They are dominated by English. Some like Twi dominate others. And all this is what we call language conflict or diglossia. And there's rampant, there's a lot of negative linguistic attitudes. For example, parents don't want to send their children to schools where English is being taught, where local language is being taught. They want English to be taught, and they feel that local languages, their own languages, do not have the capacity to, for example, transmit knowledge. So things like that. So there's also a disconnection from a cultural point of view between the curriculum and the content, which means that students are alienated from their own culture, their own nature, who they are, their identity, and their environment. So we do not really care about where we are, who we are, and what our culture is. These youth become nomads in what I would call an identity zombie land. This leads to a mentality of poverty, ignorance, suffering, and, sorry to say, stupidity. The mentality of the youth, a lot of youth we see in our streets today, is nothing short of stupidity. Agriculture, which is a form of culture, is neglected. And I mention agriculture because I believe agriculture is really the foundation of human society. It is a fundamental aspect for the survival and the progress of human society. But today, everybody is running away from agriculture. and students in rural areas especially feel that agriculture should be left to their parents and their grandparents, and that this is not worthwhile, it is too difficult. Of course, governments also do not support, do not provide what it would take to encourage the youth to turn to agriculture. So moving on to the next point, after culture, we have development. And as I was saying, all these issues mean that development is thwarted. Of course, as soon as you say development, everybody refers to material development. But we forget that before material development, we probably need human development. And this, I would say, dichotomy also leads to frustration and materialism, which is based on consumerism. Buy this, buy that, buy this, buy that. iPhone 3, iPhone 13, iPhone 14. And then we neglect our spiritual nature and our deeper aspirations, which is why there's frustration, because these material things cannot satisfy you, especially if you neglect the spiritual dimension of your reality. So, however, on the one hand, material prosperity is reserved for negligent and selfish elites, and the rest of the people, 80%, 70% of people, much more than that, are powerless and become the victims of propaganda, commercialization of goods and services, mental oppression, etc., through the vectors of the press, social media, and even education. All these vectors push material prosperity and as the meaning for life. In democracy and other forms of government become shams that promote capitalism, oppression, injustice, and discrimination against women, poor, blacks, in other climes, and other kinds of minorities. So these are some of the issues which I think are endemic and need to be addressed. Finally, I think the immense power of technology should be harnessed. However, it is being misused and misapplied. Knowledge and science seem to be the sole property of mega companies in the West who produce it, sell it, and apply it for their own benefit. I'm referring to Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, and all these big companies, not forgetting Amazon. And where technology is used in Africa, often it enslaves rather than liberates or empowers. So this is a quick overview of some of the issues I think we can talk about when we talk about education in Africa, in Ghana in particular. Now, for iBADI, I will just give you an overview of the past 2 years of what I've been trying to do with my dear wife and friends in Ghana to address aspects, not the whole of it, but aspects of this situation. Now, iBADI is a project we are running, which is where B stands for bilingualism, culture, and the arts. So I think that in schools and communities, we should promote our culture, we should promote our languages, we should use the dancing, music, arts to bring us back to a better sense of who we are, where we come from, and where we want to go to. So B for bilingualism, multilingualism is a wealth, it's a source of wealth for us. It should not be used as an excuse to, to neglect the proper education of children and youth. It is quite well known that from my own research that when children go into school with their own first language being used to introduce them to reading, writing, and other subjects, including English and others, then they do far better. On the other hand, when you neglect their own language, like I mentioned earlier on, you are lowering the IQ and you are actually neglecting their chances, destroying their chances for success. Another issue, so in terms of promoting language, we are promoting reading clubs in both English and French. The children can, for example, read to each other. GHS students read to primary students, and then explain to them a little bit in a local language. So it's a bilingual approach to reading, and going forward, we are hoping to be able to, really push the use of both languages in schools where we work. So iBADI as a program has been training university students and teachers to help students to read and say stories, interact in both languages. Another aspect of what we're doing is recently we distributed books in 10 GES schools with Olinga Foundation from Accra. And based on this, we are seeking in the months coming, to establish reading clubs in these schools. So we have about 20 teachers with whom we are going to start working. We'll train them. We need to train them. And for this, of course, this process, we need funds, we need some resources to go back and train these teachers so they can implement reading clubs, really get the children to love reading, not just maybe beating them up because they can't read. So we need to train these teachers to have that attitude to working with the students. So of course, children have a natural love for learning and reading. And this is obvious when we go into the neighborhoods and when we try to interact with some of the students we have been working with. Now, so that's B for bilingualism, A for agric and environmental protection. So in the schools where we are working, especially at the Wilhelm Invent Academy, we have promoted a school garden. And here you can see on TCC, working with some students, showing them how they can actually water the plants without wasting water. So she taught them using pure water bags, filling a pure water bag and using one bag for each plant without just spraying the water all over the place. And you can see the interest all the students are showing. This is just a way to help them to realize that agriculture, gardening, these are viable options. They are not shameful or useless, non-profitable practices. Now we had actually started putting up a demonstration farm so that the students could even come there to see how fish farming is done, how composts are made, how intercropping, but then in October 2023, we are hit by the floods from the Akosovos village. And you can see how much damage this caused to our farm, our demonstration farm, not far from Bato. So, well, we are starting again. We are hoping that we'll be able to kickstart again and not lose hope, not be helpless or hopeless. So that's A for agriculture and the environment. Then D for development and moral education and mentorship. So here, with Cecile and others, we reach out to train teachers. On the right, you can see a picture of Cecile offering teacher training, class management, discipline, and things like that. And then on the left, there's a children's class in the community, which is normally run by a youth called Lord, who works with us on the farm as well as in the school projects. We also hoping to employ a second person who will serve as a programs manager. And then the fourth element of iBADI is IT, and of course artificial intelligence. So seeing how we can harness technology in general and use it to empower the students. So in the meantime, we have not yet implemented this in schools, but we have Zoom seminars, we have WhatsApp groups, which we use to train teachers, engage university students in literacy methodologies, focusing on the role that the youth can play in society. So that is actually what I call a Youth for Social Change group with about 500 members at the University of Ghana, and also, of course, including former students and just friends and sympathizers. So on the right, you can see our logo and you can see the page of the Youth for Social Change group. Next, we have maybe an important part of today's webinar is what can we do? What can my friends and my family do moving forward over the next 2 years? In this picture here, you can see my dear cousin, Barbara, who came from London. And then so we took her to Bator to visit the school, the Wilhelm School. On the left, you have the proprietor of the school. And on the right, you have myself. And these kids are in JHS 2 and 3. Yeah, 2 and 3. So we interacted with them, made friends with them, advised them. And I think this mentorship is important for them to have a vision of where they can go, what they can do, who they are, and things like that. So next we have, and that's what can friends and family do. We have, as I just said, the Youth for Social Change group, which we want to push forward to support literacy training for teachers in basic schools. So we have a group of about 20 teachers, like I said. We want to train them across these 10 schools and help them to initiate and run 10 reading clubs, reading and writing clubs in the North Tong and South Tong districts of the Volta region. So that's one important thing we want to be doing over the next 2 years. We want the university students to visit the schools, to mentor and interact with them. If you remember, I said I took a bunch of university students to work with the students and teachers in those schools, working around literacy training, training them, reading and writing sessions, drama, depending on what skills and talents the students themselves have, the university students have, then we would organize these trips. And then once again, the university students to support and facilitate the recently set up Ghana Education Service Teachers Literacy Training WhatsApp group. For those 20 teachers, we have recruited more or less after the visit to the flood-hit schools, where we distributed books with the Olenga Foundation. And then, of course, there will be opportunities for university students at the Olenga Foundation, at the iBADI Training Institute, as our means and our resources advance. Now, what can you do also? You can contribute to the GoFundMe crowdfunding initiative for iBADI. The link is in the biography, the reference section of this PowerPoint. So I'll share the PowerPoint as well as the information necessary to contribute. You can contribute $20, 20 euros, 20 pounds. You can decide to contribute 50 pounds. You can decide every month to send us something small. It all goes to help promote what we are trying to do. So what are we trying to do? Over the next few months, we need to set up the iBADI Institute office. The office has been built. A bit of furniture has been procured. And so we need to employ one project manager, as I mentioned earlier. But we also need to buy office equipment, a smartphone, a computer, a printer, a few things to help us to function. We need to scale up the iBADI model, promote reading and writing clubs in local language and English, promote the connection of science and agriculture with our model farm and the idea of school gardens. We want to organize school visits where the students will take trips. We need training materials to carry out these things. And we need to explore how technology can be mitigated in its negative effects and harnessed to promote literacy and learning. So in addition to all this, we want to collaborate with the Baha'i communities in that area to implement the Baha'i-inspired Junior Youth Empowerment Program, which is a way of combining science and religion. Not only is there intellectual development, but there's also moral development, because we recognize that when people are intelligent, but they're not honest, then that leads rather to negative effects. And of course, if you are honest and kind, but you are not educated and intelligent, then you don't go much further either, even though that is not bad. So we are also interested in promoting this moral and intellectual capacity building, which will enable the children as they grow up to have proper spiritual faculties. They are honest, they are generous, they are kind, they are helpful, they serve their communities, as well as developing their own capacities and things like that. So thank you so much for listening. Here we have some links and references, which complements some of the things I've said. And we can end here. I'll share these documents with you. Hopefully tonight I'll have good internet connection and I may not have to replay this. Yeah, but in any case, you have this one also as a recording to refer to. Hopefully tonight I will also record and yeah. So thank you so much and God bless you.